You don't want to miss this episode of the AI Show where Vijai talks about data labeling in Azure ML. Stay tuned. Hi, Vijay. How are you?
Doing good, Beatrix. How about you?
Good, good. Well, I'm really excited to have you on the show because the topic that you're going to be talking about is just like super exciting and also like super like important for just about anybody who's doing machine learning, right?
True.
So tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure, yeah. First of all, thanks for inviting me into this AI show. I'm Vijai Kannan. I'm part of the Microsoft AI Azure Machine Learning organization. My team and myself, we are primarily focused on enabling data labeling capabilities as part of the Azure ML.
Okay, so you mentioned data labeling. Tell us when is that used? And what is it? What is data labeling and why do we need it?
Sure, definitely. Yeah, data labeling, you can think it's mainly around detecting and annotating data, right? So with the labels, right? In this case, the data could be more like images, text, or video, audio, or even LiDAR files or radar. There are a lot of different formats of data, right? Generally, the machine learning professionals or data scientists, they will have the unlabeled data, right? Which they want to get it labeled. And these scientists will look for some kind of a labeling service to convert this labeled data into more of a labeled data, right? So that's where they'll use some kind of a labeling service. So once the labeling data has been prepared, these scientists take this labeled data and then feed it into their machine learning models for further training the model, right? This is what the data labeling is about.
Okay, so can you give us a high level overview of the labeling workflow?
Sure, yeah, definitely. So I'll talk about more at a high level workflow, how it works in the AML labeling space. So let's say we have the unlabeled data, right? So the person comes in and then they create a labeling project in AML. And then once the project is created, we have a task creator component, which takes this unlabeled data set and then start creating tasks for the human labelers. These are primarily the tasks which the human labelers are going to pick and then start labeling, right? So here, if you notice here, the human labelers pick this unlabeled task and then they started generating the label data set. So this process can keep on going, right? At this point, you have the option to export the data. So there are several formats we support. Later, I will speak about in the later part of the session. So this process can keep going. So as this process keeps going, and once we have enough labeled data set, we do something interesting. So what we do is we train a machine learning model behind the scenes, right? And then we use the output of the model in several ways, right? Initially, you can look at like the model quality may not be that great, right? But over a period of time, it will improve. But we still want to use the early output which we are getting from the model. So what we do is we create a clustered task, meaning like a clustered task, you can think more like similar images grouped together, right? So when the labeler sees those similar images grouped together, it is easy for them to label. And this will help them to speed up their labeling process. And also it will also minimize the context switching, right? And reduce the cognitive load. So there are several benefits comes with that, right? So this can happen as fast as the clustering. Once the model is very confident, okay, what the label is, and it is super confident, then the model will automatically start predicting the labels for the upcoming images. So that we call it as a pre-labeling. So together, the clustering and pre-labeling on our scenario, we call it as more of an ML assist task. That's how it happens. So this is the overall flow, how the AML labeling works today.
Okay, so I got really intrigued about the clustering and pre-labeling because I feel like that will really speed things up. But I'd love to see a demo. Can we see a demo?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, so what you are seeing here is ml.azure.com. So this is the Azure Machine Learning Studio, right? So here we have several services as part of Azure ML. People can come in, create notebooks. They can create ML pipeline using Designer, right? And then they can register, deploy ML models. So under the Manage section, you see the data labeling services. The user comes into data labeling. Let's say the user comes in here. They click on add project, right? So for creating a labeling project, they go through a series of steps here, right? So for example, 5 to 6 simple steps the ML professional goes through. The first one is the they provide a project name here. In this case, I'm going to use any name here, right? And then if you look at here, the media type, there are two media types we support. So one is the image and the text so far, right? With image, there are multiple labeling project types. So first two are like image classification, multi-class, image classification, multi-label. The difference between these two is given an image, if you are able to assign only one label to that image is called multi-class. Given an image, if you are able to assign multiple labels to that same image is called multi-label. Object detection, you can think it's like more like drawing a rectangular bounding boxes within an image, right? You can draw identify various objects and mark it, right? More like a rectangular boxes. And instance segmentation is something interesting where you can draw exact contour around each and every object within an image. So these are the four types we support today, and all these four project types are already in GA. Right, and now I switch to media type text. We also support text labeling. So if you notice the first two, which is more like a text classification multi-class and text classification multi-label, this is, you can think more like a document level classification. Given a document, if you are able to assign only one label to the entire document, that is called multi-class. Given a document, if you are able to assign multiple labels to that same document is called multi-label. With the NER, which stands for named entity recognition, is like you can think, given a document, you can pick a word, assign a label. It can be a word, it can be a sentence, it can be a paragraph, right? So you can tag those lines and assign a label. So we support all these text-related project types. The first two are currently in public preview, and the third one, NER, is currently in private preview. So not many people will have access to it. If they need access, probably they can reach out to me. I can grant them access. Then they'll be able to see this capability as well. So the user goes through this several steps, and then if you notice here, they can define the labels, provide the instruction how the labeler needs to label the data. So all those steps are there. And if you notice here at the last, we also support the ML assisted labeling, which I talked about, right? So here the user will be able to even choose opt-in, right? Whether I want to use ML assist in this labeling project or not. They will have that kind of a flexibility, right? Let's say the ML professional goes through the step and then create this project, right? I already have a project where it has been already created. So I will show you quickly. I'm just switching my tabs here. Okay. So once the project is created, this project, if you notice, we already have labeled several images. That's where all this dashboard got populated. But if it is a project newly created, all these dashboards will be empty in the initial. Then it will automatically start populating, right? So if you look at here, this is more of a project management aspect. So now, as a PM of the project, I myself have access to label the data, right? In that case, I'm going to click the label data button, which will take me to the labeling experience. You can see that. And also, we also support the labeler role, where the labelers will not be able to see any of this information. They can only label data. The experience for labeler is going to be like this, right? If they click the label data, so if the instruction was typed in, the instruction would show up here. They come in, let's say the first image loads up. But if you notice here, when I came into the first image itself, since this project was ML Assist enabled, and we have already labeled manually few hundred images, so the machine process kicked in, the ML Assist process kicked in, automatically start detecting the labels here. So you can see the status on the top, task pre-label. That means the machine has identified what the label is, right? This is what it sees. So if you notice here, already board has been tagged. So in this case, as a labeler, if it looks good, I just need to simply accept and submit it, right? I submitted, the next image shows up. Let's say the ML Assist process identified the car. So now, based on my scenario, if I'm looking for more preciseness, right, I feel, oh, I need to adjust the label. So I can go and adjust the label here. Things looks good, I submitted. The next object shows up. So now in this case, you see a lot of cars over here, right? Imagine I'm going to draw the bounding box for each and every car. It is more time consuming, right? This is where the ML Assist process helps in. But in order for the ML Assist process to kick in, we should have labeled a few hundred images in the beginning, right? That's how the model gets learned. So, and other than this, there are a lot of UI settings available. You can adjust the zoom. Then you have the brightness adjustment, contrast adjustment, right? And then you can put it in the full screen mode, right? So, and those options are available. And in case if the image does not fit into any of this label class, we have the skip function. So there are several functions available here. And if I click on shortcuts, there is a lot of shortcuts available just to help the labeler to speed up the labeling process. So now I'm going back into the project. This is the labeling flow. Now I go back into the project here. And if you notice here, now as a PM of the project, I can review the work of my labeler, how they did it, right? So in that case, I click this label data experience here, the first image shows up here. So now as a PM, I can look at, oh, my labeler labeled it rightly. Now I click next, right? Okay, if it looks good, I accept it and then keep navigating. As a PM, if I don't accept the label, what my labelers have done, I can even change the label, or I can tag another label also. And then you see the update label button here, you click it. So the PM will be able to override the label what the labeler did it. So this is more of the review flow kind of. Then at any time, the PM of the project have the option to export the data, right? So currently for this kind of object detection, we support export to COCO file, export as AML data set, right? If you export AML data set, it will create a data set, and then you can use that exported AML data set in the rest of the AML pipeline. Right. So yeah, and one thing I wanted to show you, like if I go back into the dashboard here, I talked about the ML assisted, right? So if you want to know more about the ML assist process, you can click on this experiment link, which will take you to the experiments tab here. So it should take like few seconds for this to refresh. So if you notice here, so when the experiment was running, so as the human labeling was happening, we have been retraining the model also, right? Because the model continued to learn. You can look at what is the mean average precision score for each run. And then if you are interested to more, you can click on that specific run. Even you can click on the child run, navigate further kind of, right? And then if I go into the child runs here, you can see for the child run, what is the mean average precision score? You can look at it here, right? And then if I click on this link, and then if I go into outputs and log, this is where it's interesting. So here you see this folder called train artifacts, and you see the file called model_wrapper.pickle. This is the model file which got custom trained for the user scenario, for the ML professional scenario, right? Here, the user has the option to even download this file, right? It's a custom trained model. They can download this file. They can deploy this file here, and then they can create an AKS endpoint, and they can call this AKS endpoint for further inferencing. So this is around the ML assist portion. This covers the brief demo of the labeling services, what we have.
That is just super cool. So because of this ML assisted capability that you added, then people can save a ton of time, right? Because when clustering and pre-labeling kick in, they're kind of done. They don't have to do that much more work. But I'm still thinking, like, some people may not even want to label those first few hundred images by hand themselves. Like, they may want to outsource that, right? So I'm just wondering if you support outsourcing labeling to vendors.
True, correct. Yeah. So here, yes, we do support outsourcing to vendors here. So even it's part of the second step on the flow. So what we did is, from Microsoft side, we have identified 2 vendor companies, and those vendor companies can provide labor force to help in labeling, right? Generally, when we say based on workforce, majorly, there are 3 types of labeling. One is the private workforce, then there is outsourcing, then there is the crowdsourcing. We support both the in-house labeling, which is more the customer can have their own labor force to label the data. The second one is the outsourcing part, which I talked about, right? So about those vendor companies can come and help on labeling. Only call out here is the business model is going to be like this. So from Microsoft side, at this time, we are providing only a platform, right? We don't have direct labor force. That's where we have this vendor workforce here. So the model is going to be, we will be connecting the customer to the vendor through the Azure Marketplace. So the customer can go into the Azure Marketplace. They can look at the profile of the vendor companies. Even they have the option, contact me. Once they click it, so the Azure Marketplace will route the customer to the vendor, and the vendor within, like, say 48 hours or so, they will connect back with the customer and talk about, like, to further understand what the scope look like, timelines, all those things. They have to hash out separately. Has to be a separate contract outside of Microsoft. So all those pricing, everything to be dealt. Once this flow works, then the customer can create a project flow, and then they can add the corresponding vendor into the labeling project and continue labeling.
Very cool. This is really cool. So, but what if people already have their data labeled or partially labeled? Do you have any support for that?
Yeah, I like that question. So yeah, so that's a great question. So so we have a capability called labeled dataset import. So you may not see it in this flow which I am showing here, but that is currently in preview phase. Like in fact, we shared with many users on that one. So I can enable access. So what that will do is several of the users in the past years, they have used their own labeling tool, or they use some other open source tool and label lots of data. So now they looked at AML labeling. They were super excited to move the data into AML labeling. So the ask was, hey, how I can port the data, which I already labeled. And the scenario could be like, once they ported, some scenario is like, okay, I'm going to resume where I left off, right? I imported it, I want to continue further. So we do support like continue labeling. The other scenario is after import, the user want to relabel it again, right? Make further optimization on the existing label. So we do support start over, so where the pointer will go back to the first image and then the user can label the data, right? So we do support these two scenarios as part of the label dataset import.
Great. That's great. So are there any plans to integrate with cognitive services custom vision?
Yes, so this question periodically comes. Yes, so the thing is, in fact, cognitive services, custom vision, and AML, we are all part of the same organization. So what we are currently working at is more of an integration scenario. In fact, currently it is in preview also. In fact, we shared with some customers where our users will start seeing, once they label the data in AML, they can take this labeled output and directly into cognitive services custom vision and train it in that model. I mean, it's vice versa also. Even users going into cognitive custom vision, if they want to have the data labeled, so they can come back, route it into AML labeling, they can get it labeled and take it forward. So from the UI standpoint, you would start seeing in the coming weeks or months, those integrations start lighting up. And in fact, it is in private preview already.
Great. This is great. So do you support labeling for healthcare, like healthcare related images?
Yes. So yeah, we recently started supporting, got into healthcare. So we started with labeling of X-ray images, right? So with healthcare, when we say there is X-ray images, MRI, CT scans, ultrasounds, are a lot of modalities out there. So we started supporting X-rays. So X-rays currently it's more like a DICOM format images. So if the user has the images directly in DICOM, they can upload those DICOM images into the blob storage, and then they can use our labeling platform. In fact, our there is a different UI controls for when we use X-ray images. So you will have the window and level functions. So you would see different set of controls. We automatically detect, in fact, like whether it's a DICOM, we show those controls. If it is a regular BMP or JPEG, we show different controls. So we do support it.
That's great. So imagine that I label my data set, and then later I decide that I want to add more data to my data set. How does that workflow work?
Correct. Yeah. So definitely, several scenarios, customers or users will run into this scenario. So that's where we have a step in the project creation called the incremental refresh. It's just a simple step. You just enable it, kind of, right? So, assuming you have 1,000 images are already uploaded into your blob storage location, and your labelers have labeled it to the most part. Now you realize, oh, I need to add another 500 images into the same labeling project, which can come in after 2 weeks, after a month, or 2 months later, right? But you want to get it labeled as part of the same project. So in order to do that, you go into the incremental refresh option and just enable it, right? So it's a simple checkbox, enable it. So what we do is, once it's enabled, we set up a polling process. In fact, that polling process runs every 3 hours, which go and look for is there is any newly added images into your blob storage location. If so, this process will automatically detect what those additional images are and start feeding those new images into the labeling pipeline, right? And the labelers can keep on continue labeling. So this capability exists today. So in fact, this is more like polling process. In fact, it is almost in the process of rolling out. So we are doing this on-demand incremental refresh, where if the user feels, oh, right now I want to upload my new images, additional images, and continue labeling, so they would have the option to on-demand refresh also.
This is awesome. So I think that people learned a lot today with your demo and all the answers to these questions. But what if people want to learn more about it? Where can they go to find out more?
Yes. So definitely. So one is like we have these links available as part of this show. We are sharing what those links are. It's more like a documentation which are already available. They can go to that link, and then in the documentation, if they need further help, there is a link option. If they click that option, any feedback, anything, which will all route to our team. So we look at those feedback on a daily basis, kind of.
This is great. I think this was great. I think the feature is great. I think your demo is great. And I hope that people are excited as I am about this. So I just want to thank you, Vijay, for coming to the show. I think this was really a great show. And thanks for coming.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me to be part of this show.
In this episode of the AI Show, you learned about the data labeling workflow in Azure ML in detail. You'll learn how ML-assisted data labeling can greatly speed up labeling through clustering and pre-labeling, how Azure ML can help you outsource the labeling task, and how you can use data labeling with Cognitive Services Custom Vision. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.